Baltimore County Council Structure Work Group. My name is Dr. Tony Campbell. I am the chair that was appointed by my fellow work group members in the county council. So thank you for spending time on this very important subject tonight. I think most of the rest of our work group members are here. So before the staff, we turn over to the staff for a briefing on how we got to this point. I want to give our other members an opportunity to introduce themselves, beginning with my vice chair, Vicki Allman.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Allman. I'm happy to be a member of this group. Looking forward to some lively discussion tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else, please unmute yourself and go right ahead.
My name's Keith Dorsey. I'm appointed to the work group by County Executive Bonnie Olszewski.
I'm John Cluster. I was appointed by Councilman David Marks. Glad to be on board.
I'm Albert Harris, and I was appointed by 6th Councilman District, Mike Ertel.
Edward Kramer, appointed by the 7th District, Todd Crandall.
Emily Brophy, appointed from the Baltimore County Planning Board.
Good evening, Eric Rockel, appointed by 3rd District Councilman Wade Catch.
I think Jeff was on the line.
Okay, Jeff Mayhew, demographer appointed by the County Council.
Okay, I think that's all the members that we have on the line tonight. I want to turn over to the staff so they can give a presentation to our attendees tonight and our participants to tell us where we are and how we got here. Adam, Brad.
Okay, so give me just a moment and I'll share my screen. The presentation should be between 5 and 10 minutes, and then we can roll right into the rest of it. Okay. Can everyone see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're here in our first public hearing. This work group was originally established by a council resolution. Its main requirements are to research the composition of peer legislative bodies in Maryland and around the country, review the demographic trends for Baltimore County and the state, look at taxpayer costs associated with any increase or change in the council members or the configuration of the council. And we are required to convene at least one public hearing, although, as we'll probably talk about, we are going to be doing more than one. And our written report must be to the County Council by March 31st. Just a quick, very high-level review of Baltimore County and its government. We're a county of about 854,000. That makes us the 3rd largest by population in Maryland, just behind Montgomery and PG County. In terms of geographic size, the county is 862 square miles, which also makes it the 3rd largest by land area, right behind Frederick and Garrett. One unique feature about Baltimore County is that it's surrounded by, it surrounds the independent city of Baltimore, which is a quite unusual configuration. Our form of government is executive council, meaning we have 2 distinct branches of government. And this was established by our charter in 1956. The county council is made up of 7 members, each elected by their own district. We have 0 incorporated towns or cities, and our annual operating budget hovers around $2.7 billion. As I said, the Baltimore County Council is 7 members, and that was established in 1956 with the charter. All members are elected by their council district. We have no at-large members. That is in contrast to some of the to PG and Montgomery County that do have at-large. County Council is the legislative branch. So we do have 2 distinct branches of government here, unlike some of the smaller counties where legislative and executive functions are kind of combined. And it's the council is led by the council chair. So it, as kind of a 101 on what does the county council or the local legislator do, the council has primary control over zoning. The council can make cuts to the budget, but cannot increase the spending. The county council votes and votes on all local legislation, so changes to the county code and county charter. And the council confirms all department heads and some board members made by the county executive. The council also has direct appointments to some boards and commissions as well. The council also votes on all contracts above $25,000, and of course provides constituent services and constituent advocacy to the county government. So again, starting with kind of a high-level review, this is a chart just showing the overall population change from 1950 to 2020. As you can see, in 1950, the county hovered around 270,000 in terms of population, and today it's in the neighborhood of 850,000. The biggest jump is in the 1950 to 1970 range. So here is our current county council map and the breakdowns of each district's population. As you can see, there is some variation. The average size, just if you take straight population divided by 7, the average size is around 122,000. And as you can see, you know, the different districts center around some of the different geographic centers, you know, Towson, Dundalk, Randallstown, Pikesville. So here is the demographic breakdown for each district. I won't go into too much detail, but they're here if anyone does want to look at that. This is the same information, but a little bit more digestible. It gives you kind of the overall, you know, sliding picture of it, of all the demographics for each council district. The blue is white, the orange is black, and gray is Hispanic and Latino. So this is how we compare in terms of our local legislative makeup to other large counties around the state. So we've got our the population, the overall number of council members, and then population per member. Now, there's a difference here between population per member and population per district. And this is to account for some of the jurisdictions that have at-large representation. It's a little hard to judge which figure should be reviewed, but we have them both, so the context is there. So to get a little bit more into the comparison between Baltimore County and other jurisdictions, unlike almost every other county in the state, we have no municipalities or towns. What primarily this means is that there's no power sharing between municipalities and the county. It's all decisions regardless of how small or large, are come to the county executive and the county council. But that's not to say that we don't have towns and cities. Of course we do. We just have there's just a slightly different measurement to see them. So the Census Bureau does create what's called census designated places to look at unincorporated communities and kind of get try and make as close to an apples to apples comparison between incorporated places and unincorporated places. So examples are Catonsville, Dundalk, and Towson. And generally, there is some local input on the census designated place boundaries. So just as a quick recap, the county's population has more than doubled since the creation of the 7-member council in 1956. The average resident per district is about 122,000. We also have a very high ratio of residents per council district. Again, that depending on whether you're looking at residents per district or residents per councilman, that has a little bit of difference to it. The county's population, I didn't have a specific slide on the history of the demographics, but today the county's population sits at nearly 50% people of color, and we have no municipalities despite the size. So one of the things that the last thing that we did as a group was look at fiscal impacts. It's split into 2 parts: operating and capital. Today, the council's total operating is about 4.9 million. That is a little bit larger than what you might see listed in our budget. That's because this total operating number takes into account fringe benefits and things that might be lumped into other parts of the county's budget overall. So this is separating out the entirety of council operations into one number. For context, the county's general fund balance, or generally the budget, is $2.7 billion. And like I said, this is a holistic figure. It takes into account everything from salaries, staff, supplies, equipment, benefits, everything. If you divide that number by 7, you get roughly $675,000 per council member. So we can use that per council member number to estimate how much it would take to operate the council with 2 or 4 additional members. So at a 9-member council, it's around 6.1 million, and with an 11-member council, it's about 7.5 million. And remember, these are just estimates. There's, as we discussed at length in our last meeting, there's definitely different ways that staffing can affect this number, but this is, trying to create a reasonable way to look at it. This was what we came up with. So now we get to the capital impact. Generally speaking, the council occupies the most of the second floor in the historic courthouse in Towson. Our offices consist of the 7 members' offices, district offices for district staff, offices for central staff like myself, and council secretary and council administrator, the council chambers themselves, 2 meeting rooms, and storage for records and supplies. We used a projection of $700 per square foot for construction. This includes everything from design to labor to materials. And it also includes all the non-hardware things like abatement of any issues that we might encounter, IT improvements, and furniture. So the estimate is overall, it's $12 million over 4 years. But it's really important to understand this estimate, and this is to touch every single office and room in the council offices. So it wouldn't be just trying to make room for 2 or 4 additional members. It would be a literal gutting, so to speak, of the council offices to modernize it. And again, for context, last time such a holistic renovation happened was around 1988 to 1990, so the 89 timeframe. And that concludes the presentation. So, Mr. Chair, I hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Adam and Brad and Christina. The staff has been fantastic. Their work should be applauded because every time we come to a meeting, they have more information for us. They send us information a couple times a week at least. So they're doing a great job. So I want to applaud them for their work. We're going to move to the public testimony now, but I do want to make one caveat announcement. One is this one is that we have about 15 people, I think, signed up. So I want to make sure everyone has enough time and also make sure we, if any work group members have any questions, follow-up questions, that they have the opportunity to ask them. So twofold announcement. One, please plan your remarks to be about 3 minutes. I know the website said about 5, but we want to make sure everybody has enough time, especially for Q&A afterwards. So about 3 minutes for your initial remarks, and Christina will hopefully be on top of the timer and keep us on track as far as that's concerned. And then the second remark I'll make is that work group members, if you have any questions, please raise your hand so Christina can recognize you so you can ask your question and be unmuted, and we can keep this in order. Okay. So Christina, you want to, how about I think Delegate Sheila Roof is on the line. Let's start with her, and I'll use it at your discretion about who's coming up next.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I have a list as well. So if you want to go ahead and call the name, I'll make sure that they're elevated to a panelist at that time. And then once they've concluded their comments and the work group members have finished speaking to that particular person, I will put them back in the attendee list.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Let's start with Delegate Sheila Roof then.
Delegate Ruth is on.
Good evening, Delegate.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the work group. Thank you for having me. My name is Sheila Ruth. I'm a delegate representing District 44B in Western Baltimore County. I live in Council District 1. I'm here in support of adding 4 additional districts to the County Council, and also in opposition to adding any sort of at-large members. Adding districts would solve 2 problems. One is right-sizing the districts to the size they were intended when the charter was adopted. According to the research documents from this work group, when the charter was adopted, or actually I guess in 1960, there were 70,346 residents per county council district, and currently it's an average of 122,076. With adding 4 more districts, I calculate that would be 77,685 per district, which is very close to the number in 1960. And so it's really to right size the districts and ensure that everyone gets the best possible representation from their county council member. The second problem that this would solve is making sure that council represents the diversity of the county and enable Black residents and residents of color to have influence in electing representatives of their choice proportional to the population. So the county-wide population is 30%, almost 30%, almost a third. Asian 6.4%, Latino 7.2%. Adding at-large districts would not solve the problem because Black voters would still be outvoted by the 51.8% white vote, and Asian and Latino voters would be overwhelmed with their smaller numbers. in the vote. And so, but by adding districts, the districts could be drawn to allow Black voters to elect representation of their choice proportional to their population. And while there are not enough Asian or Latino residents to have a district drawn that they could elect the representative of their choice, by drawing districts with including pockets of those voters, they could have more influence. So I thank you so much for your time and for all your work, and happy to answer any questions.
Any work group members have any questions for Delegate Ruth? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. How about Tom Glancy?
Mr. Glancy is on.
Sir? Mr. Glancy?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm a retired attorney living in District 6, and I serve as a member of the steering committee of the 4 More for Baltimore petition drive. Make no mistake, the county needs 4 more council districts, which should consist of new districts as opposed to adding at-large seats. Having 7 districts made sense in the 1950s when the charter was adopted and the population of the county was less than half what it is now. However, subsequent population growth has left us today with more than 120,000 residents per district. As the Baltimore Sun noted last year in its op-ed supporting expansion, that ratio is substantially higher than in any of our neighboring counties, and it is indeed among the highest nationwide. And with the county projected to add 74,000 new residents over the course of the next quarter century, that ratio will only become more unsustainable going forward. Smaller districts mean that council members can know their districts better, and it provides those constituents with easier access to their elected representatives. The benefits of expansion outweigh its cost. The work group has been told that 4 districts would increase the cost of operating the council from 0.1% of all county revenues to 0.27%. In other words, an increase of 0.1% or 1 penny for every $10 spent. While I question the underlying premises of that analysis, that expansion will present no economies of scale nor offsetting savings, it remains the case that the benefits associated with smaller districts more than justify the additional costs associated with expansion. Now, I appreciate that others may disagree. However, my conversations with hundreds of voters who I have asked to sign the 4 More petition tells me that a clear majority of my fellow county residents will also conclude that the benefits of expansion far outweigh its costs. And if I am wrong in that assessment, then county voters can vote against expansion come November. However, it is Baltimore County voters who should decide that issue, not you or me. Please do not take that choice away from them over what may well be inflated cost concerns. Finally, we need to create 4 new districts rather than simply layering 4 at-large seats over the existing districts. Otherwise, we will continue to have more than 120,000 residents in each of the current districts, with all of the attendant difficulties that will continue to present. The creation of at-large districts would discourage rather than encourage often cash-strapped new voices from running for those seats, as it will require such candidates to campaign on a county-wide basis for the chance of a coveted seat at the table. Creating at-large districts in this context would likely be illegal as well. Wicomico County is currently defending against a lawsuit brought by the ACLU and the Wicomico County NAACP over its practice of electing council and school board members to at-large seats, because that practice dilutes African American representation and influence in violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act. It all harkens back to last year when Baltimore County refused to create a second majority Black district during its redistricting process and incurred up to $850,000 in legal fees defending its refusal to do so, only to eventually be forced to revise its maps. We should not unnecessarily risk similar litigation. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity to share my views with you, and I especially thank each of you for agreeing to serve on this work group.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Can we move to Pamela Shaw, please?
Ms. Shaw is on.
Good evening. Ms. Shaw?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear my name called. Can you hear
You're
me?
on. Yes,
Thank-
ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to address the work group. My name is Pamela Shaw, and I'm a resident of Lutherville in District 3. First, I want to reiterate my concern about the inability to follow your meetings due to lack of audio, either in its entirety or because certain microphones are not working. I've communicated with the staff several times about this issue. Secondarily, questions being posed to the work group are not being answered. I recently wrote asking for information on the part-time status of the councilman. How many hours are being considered part-time? 24, 32, 36? How is it even possible for a councilman to be considered part-time given the formal council meeting hours and their attendance at community meetings? How is it possible for some of the councilmen to have other full-time jobs? How is that impacting their council duties and attendance at council meetings? Thirdly, it seems that some, I'll call them decisions, have already been made in the first two meetings on the issue of countywide positions, which both of those meetings had almost no audio whatsoever. I had hoped there would be some meaningful discussion about a countywide council chair position. Would that position be potentially voting or non-voting? Would such a position provide better separation between the legislative and executive branches, or would it exacerbate an already messy relationship between the council and the county executive? Fourthly, is this work group concerned about the increasing numbers of councilmen, how it might be achieved? Whether a discussion was had that was completely lost to the public as there was no audio during that meeting? I'm concerned that here in District 3, dividing a large physical district might not be possible without dividing community associations that have existed for over 100 years. Lastly, I'm sure I would have had more questions if we've heard the discussions at the meetings. I really do thank you for this time this evening, and I look forward to hearing more of the work group's discussions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Really, we'll work with the staff to make sure that our audio is working properly at our upcoming meeting. So I apologize for that. Any member have any questions?
Not a question,
none,
but
Go ahead.
no question, but I think staff should respond to her question about the hours required for council members in terms of being listed as part-time. That is related to a personnel question that perhaps Chris can get to, or Tom Boswick. But I think she deserves an answer to the question.
Mr. Dorsey.
Okay, we'll bring that up at our next meeting, and staff has been what's the word? Communicated and directed to find said answers and get that to her. Okay. Caitlin Klim-Kellner, please.
Ms. Kellner is on.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this meeting, and thank you for the work group members for your time on this matter. My name is Caitlin Clem-Kellner. I am a multi-generational resident of the 6th District, a community leader and advocate in the Overly-Linover area, and a former candidate for Baltimore County Council. I am fully in support of expanding the Baltimore County Council to 11 members for 11 districts. When you start telling people how many individuals are within District 6, they are shocked that one individual has to spread themselves that thin to represent an area. The needs of communities within the district can be so different that having one person attempt to spread themselves to represent that area is truly an injustice to the communities, the council person, and to Baltimore County as a whole. Having lived in District 6 in the Linover community my whole life, I can say that there was a difference when our council person lived close by the heart of the district versus the outskirts or in a different area. And neighbors in this community say the same thing to me at meetings or when I'm out and about. Having a smaller district with more council members would allow more focused attention on communities, which is the point of local government, and would create a better, stronger Baltimore County. I can't help but wonder if my council person after 2019 lived closer to the areas inside the Beltway, what our community plan would be like now, if our schools would be better, and if we wouldn't be facing some of the concerns we are currently. I've also looked at the work group's minutes and their presentations, and I just want to take a second to address a few concerns and comments. I know that there were concerns about redistricting again, and honestly, I've heard nothing but bad feedback about the most recent redistricting. Communities feel in competition with other communities. I can't tell you how many times I've heard we're fighting against Towson for our community, or the inside of the Beltway looks so different than the outside because they have a different council person. I believe that this area would welcome redistricting and would like to have a council district that is Rosedale, Overly, and Parkville, for example, as many of our issues overlap more closely than other parts of the district. I've also read about sending out surveys and holding meetings in Randallstown and Perry Hall. I'm curious if the work group is setting up a table at the 7 budget meetings that are currently coming up from the county executive. From 6 p.m. to 6:30, there's community resource time. That would be a way to ensure that this work group is in all 7 council districts and reaching a diverse group of residents. I also hope that you're taking into consideration residents that do not have access to a computer. Please remember that everyone in the county does not have the same tech skills or accessibility, and this feedback needs to reach everyone. I also respect that you have to look at the tax aspect of this, but the concerns about cars and office space in Towson, never in my 12+ years as a community leader has someone said to me, if they expand the council, who will get a car? What I have heard is, will someone be at my community meeting? Will we have better representation? Will we get better improvements to our schools? That's what people want to hear, not so much about the tax aspect. Something that I've seen missing in this discussion as well is the lack of women on the county council. I have read and searched through the presentations and the minutes, and there is zero discussion on the lack of women. Given our demographic within Baltimore County and the fact that Baltimore County took a step back in this past election and a big step back compared to St. Paul's recent elections, this needs to be a discussion of this work group. I hope that you decide to focus on this in your upcoming meetings. I personally do not support at-large council members, and I have not heard any residents say that they want an at-large council member as well. We need better carved out, smaller councilmatic districts with a larger county council that can give individualized attention. Again, that is the point of local government. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and I hope to see the recommendation of this work group to be to expand the county council to 11 members. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? All right, hearing none.
I have a question. Ms. Kellner, you indicated you ran for office. One of the things we did talk about in terms of women on the council was the affordability aspect when you have very large districts. Did you find that as a concern for you in terms of having the funding to compete with incumbents in terms of very large size districts?
Absolutely. I had very, very little budget, to be incredibly honest, and people are shocked that I did the numbers that I did with that budget. But I did find that as a young woman, it was incredibly difficult to have that funding as compared to other people from other parts of the district itself. I think that if it was a smaller representation or a more localized district, that would not have been as much of a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for your testimony. If we can move on to Peter Rickles, please.
Ms. Richgis is on.
Riches, I'm sorry. Miss Richard? Richards?
Yes, Richkis, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Richkis, and I live in District 6. I appreciate the deliberative process and the information-based approach of the work group, and I thank you for your work. I've been involved in local efforts to reimagine the structure of the council to improve the representation and involvement of county residents for some time. So I've delved into this complex subject before, and I understand the work ahead of you. As has been mentioned, there have been 7 council districts since Baltimore County was chartered in 1976. But as Tom Glancy pointed out and others, the population has more than doubled and it's now more than 850,000. It's past time to add more districts to allow for better representation and to reflect the county's current demographics. Given who Baltimore County is today, it's shocking to face a council of 7 men with 1 African American. As has also been mentioned, Baltimore County has the region's worst ratio of county council members to constituents. In other words, a voter living in Baltimore County has less of a voice in county government than anyone living in Baltimore City or Carroll, Harford, Anne Arundel, and Howard counties. In fact, the comparison is not even close. The number of Baltimore County residents per district is 30% more than the next largest, and it gets worse from there. I too want to urge the work group to avoid at-large districts as a way to avoid having to draw new districts. Advocates have been concerned for some time that the county council, if it agrees to county council expansion at all, would try to do it by creating at-large districts to avoid having to draw new districts, which could dilute their power and allow the council to continue to avoid creating a second majority Black district. As has already been mentioned, I'm glad the work group is now aware that the use of at-large districts is already under challenge as a violation of federal voting rights laws in Wacomico County, and the fact that the county has already had to pay more than $800,000 in legal fees for violating the Voting Rights Act by the council's initial map in the redistricting case. To pursue at-large districts at this point would be viewed as another effort to dilute the voices of minorities and women in Baltimore County. Tonight is for public input. My input is to expand the council to 11 districts. And though they're not here tonight, there are thousands of Baltimore Countyans who have signed the Vote for More petition, who also say expand the council to 11 districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate your time and your concern. Do we have any members who have any questions? All right, thank you. Next is Fergal Maleli.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Excellent. Members of the Commission, thank you for taking the time to serve in this committee. The work that you do is important, time-consuming, and often unappreciated. My name is Ferg Mullally. You got surprisingly close, and I live in Towson in Council District 6. I had initially prepared about 5 minutes of testimony, and I'll try to keep it under 3, but apologies in advance if I run slightly over. I want to talk to you tonight about anchoring. I was introduced to this concept in the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Nobel Prize-winning economist Daniel Kahneman. Anchoring is the tendency we all have to place undue weight on the first number we hear whenever we are dealing with numerical problems. For example, in one study listed in the book, participants were asked to bid on a bottle of expensive wine after writing down the last 2 digits of their social security numbers. Those who happened to write down higher numbers tended to bid more for the wine than those with lower ones. Tonight, we are debating the optimal size of Baltimore County Council, and I believe that we are all anchored by the number 7. It's weighing us down and forcing us to think about small numbers and small changes. In order to help us let go of this anchor, I want to provide some perspective on just how small our council is relative to our population. Your briefing materials does not include a comparison across all counties of the United States, and detailed information on this on all counties is difficult to find online. So in an attempt to come up with a good number for the best size of Baltimore County, I looked instead to our nation state houses. As mentioned, we have 1 councillor per 122,000 residents. Across all 50 states, only the 4 largest have worse representation in their lower houses than we do. For example, the state of South Dakota has a population statewide which is similar to that of Baltimore County, but South Dakotans are represented by 70 representatives in their lower house and 35 in their Senate. Stop for a moment, if you would, and fixate on the number 35. Imagine the level of service the community members would get if we had 35 councillors. Imagine the diversity of views on council, the lower bar toward getting elected, and how we would make getting elected easier for women, people of colour, people of limited means, the sort of people who find the cost of campaigning across 122,000 voters prohibitive. Think about what sort of a different sort of government we would have if there was 35 seats on council. Now, a 35-member council would still be small compared to states around the country and even to other countries. But I agree that this would be a huge leap for Baltimore County and possibly too big of a leap for this work group to seriously consider taking. And so my ask to you tonight is a smaller one. In all probability, the majority of your discussions will focus on just 3 numbers. Should you increase the council size by 0, 2, or 4? But when you have those discussions, don't anchor yourselves with the current council size, and remember just how small our council is, and take the largest step that you feel is practical. Give Baltimore County 4 more districts. Give us 4 more because our council is too small to be effective. I don't say this because I'm comparing to other assemblies. I'm speaking from personal experience. I have found that I consistently get faster and more detailed responses from my elected representatives at the state and federal level than I do from my county councillors or elected school board members. All too frequently, my letters to local representatives get no response at all. And this is not a criticism of the elected officials themselves. I know some of them, and I know how hard they work, but there are simply too few of them to go around and to give all the issues facing the county adequate attention. We need a bigger council. And if we're going to go to the trouble of improving it, let's make the biggest improvement we can. Members of the committee, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, sir, for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? All right, hearing none, once again, sir, thank you for your time. How about Linda Dorsey Walker, please?
Ms. Dorsey Walker is on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Campbell and work group members. My name is Linda Dorsey Walker, and I am the chair of Vote for More, also known as 4 More for Baltimore County Ballot Issue Committee. Vote for More is a public petition effort led by ordinary county residents, not incumbent county council members, to place a question on the 2024 general election ballot in Baltimore County that would amend the county charter. The proposed charter amendment would add 4 more regular, not at-large county council districts to Baltimore County, reduce the size of each district from around 123,000 down to 78,000. Very close to where we started off in 1960 and the late 50s. Increase opportunities for women, minorities, young adults under the age of 35, disabled folks, LGBTQ individuals, as well as the many, many new American groups that now reside in Baltimore County that didn't live here in 1956. All of these entities are asking for a seat around the table, and a group of citizens banded together to start the process of trying to enlarge the county again. I say again because in the year 2000, I came before the county council, and with a much, much smaller population in Baltimore County, I asked for 2 more districts. I wasn't the only one that came that year. The League of Women Voters came in the year 2000 and asked for 2 more districts when Baltimore County was much smaller. They said it was inconvenient. We'd have to start from scratch. It would be too much work. And so they pushed the ball down the alley to the point where we are now, where things are more expensive to do. At your last meeting, I heard someone ask the question, why are we here? What brought us here? Was it the federal government? Was it the Justice Department? Was it the state of Maryland ordering us? Was it the county executive? No. What brought you here were the actions of a group of citizens banded together under Vote for More that led to the creation, in large part, of this work group, specifically to expand the county council, because we initially asked if the county council members would do what's always been in their power, which is to simply put the question of 4 more on the ballot and let the citizens of the Baltimore County be trusted enough to make the decision. Instead, an effort was made to further delay the process by, let's have a study, let's have it go on for months and months and issue a report. Okay. We are very cooperative in that as well. But we want to make sure that nothing is lost in the process. For example, it is still the reality that if we go to 4 more districts, we will drop from 123,000 members down to 78,000 members. Howard County currently has 65,000 members, constituents per member. Harford County has 60. PG County and Montgomery County have respectively 92 and 90,000. How do we think that 123,000 should be considered the norm? I listened to the data that was presented at the last meeting. I believe it was Mr. Mayhew that said that by 2050, we can expect to have a population of 934,520 individuals. That would mean if we did not increase the number of districts, we would then go from having an outrageously high, one of the largest, if not the highest in the country right now, of 123,000 constituents per council member, all the way up to 133,000. When will it ever end? In addition to that, please understand that creating smaller districts will allow for the cost of running for office to be reduced so that new, young minorities and females will be able to get their foot in the door. I heard people saying, well, no, all we need to do is keep the number of districts the same and really, really make their salaries really high. Let's make them full-time. That'll incentivize minorities and women and young people. The problem is there'll still only be 7 districts. It will not have addressed what has led 7,500 people or more to sign the petition. I heard some discussion about let's have an 800-person digital survey, because that'll be a good picture of what the citizens of Baltimore County want. How is 800 a better number than 7,500? I don't think it is, because as we've gone around, as several people have stated, when we've gone up and we've gone to every part of the county, mostly Republican areas, Democratic areas, the areas that had independent voters. When we went up to mostly Republican Glendon, you know what they said? Give us that petition. We got hundreds of signatures that were mostly Republican. And guess what? They admitted they were mostly Republican and wanted to sign. And you know why? They said, we are tired. Every redistricting cycle, you have to come up with this artificially high number. This time it's almost 123,000, okay? And every time we get to be the stepchild, bantered back and forth from one redistricting cycle to the next between Randallstown and Pikesville. Know this, we don't feel that we have anything in common with the people that live in Randallstown or Pikesville. If the opportunity comes along, the possibility that we might be able to be included with, say, Hereford, an area that we feel we have more in common with, that would be in a smaller area where the council member would be more accessible and accountable to fewer people, we will take the risk of signing your petition to make that happen. The same thing was told to us over in Perry Hall and White Marsh, the same thing. So consider this. You're simply giving people more money and making their jobs full-time doesn't change the fact that sometimes it's not just that the people are feeling overworked or don't have enough time for their constituents. Sometimes the constituents really don't want to be part of that district. And I think you have to consider that. The state law says that 30 days after a ballot issue question passes, that would be December 5th of 2024, the process will have to begin. That would mean that a body would have to be convened and it would be able to meet for an entire year to draw from scratch the way it was done in 1955. They started from scratch, a plain piece of paper, 11 new districts. It doesn't say that you have to discount historic areas of influence. We have several historic areas of influence around the county. And just like with regular redistricting, they won't be ignored. We know that there are pockets of communities that want to stay together. No one's talking, for example, about let's break up all of Pikesville. No one's talking about that. That's a historic area of influence. But at the same time, starting from scratch will allow us the opportunity to recognize the huge amount of growth that's taken place over in Parkville and Overley from people that moved out of Morgan Park into the county. That area is now almost 50% minority. So what I guess I'm saying is, please stop focusing so much on that's how it seems so self-serving. Let's figure out how to give the people who appointed us a bigger salary and a full-time job. How about getting back on course with what this is supposed to be about? Diversity and equity and so forth, and giving more opportunities for our young people to know that their government can work without the okie doke being going on in the background. Okay, I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? I have
Yes.
a hand up.
Hello. I see a hand,
Hello.
Eric Roca.
Yes, Ms. Dorsey Walker, just a little housekeeping matter. What district do you live in now?
I live in the 4th Councilmanic District, and I live in Legislative District 11A. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that the vast majority of our state delegation have all signed this, and multiple judges have said, give me that petition because this is the right thing to do, and now's the right time to do it.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Mm-hmm.
We move, Cheryl Gottlieb, please.
Ms. Gottlieb is on.
Can you hear me?
Hello,
Hello?
yes.
Yes.
Good evening.
Hi. So my name is Cheryl Gottlieb, and I am an 18-year resident of Towson. I can't believe it's been that long. And I'm here to testify in favor of expanding the council to 11 districts and in opposition to adding at-large districts, you know, mostly for the same reasons that everybody else has said. I do believe that at-large districts will be an impediment to a diverse council, but also to keep it brief and just not repeat what everybody else has already said. I think it's disingenuous to compare Baltimore County to other counties such as Montgomery that have incorporated areas. Like Rockville has a town council, Gaithersburg has a town council. My parents live in a town next to Gaithersburg called Washington Grove that is incorporated, has a population of about 500 residents, but they have a mayor and a town council of 6 councilmen or council people. I'm not sure the gender, you know, makeup. So in counties like Montgomery, where maybe their county council also has a large district, they have an extra level of government to be responsive to their needs. They have, you know, a mayor that lives at walking distance from them. All their town council members live walking distance from them, that they can call, you know, at night if there's an issue. There was once an issue of illegal fireworks. My parents got on the phone that night and called their mayor. We don't have that kind of access because we don't have that extra layer of government. So I think it's more imperative that our county council districts are smaller in order to make up for the fact that for whatever reason, Baltimore County has never actually had incorporated towns. And we need to account for that when having this discussion. And with that, I will give back the rest of my time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Housekeeping note, is anybody having any sound issues? Any of the members having any sound issues? I've seen a lot of this, so I assume that's a negative. Okay. So that being said, we're going to thank you so much for your testimony. That being said, we're going to move on to anybody have any questions for Ms. Gottlieb? All right, hearing none. Patricia Fallon.
Ms. Fallon is on.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. Tony, can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes.
Okay, I wasn't able to hear the last 2 speakers, but I'm glad that sound seems to be working now. I actually heard most of Linda Walker's though, so that was good. So hi, I'm Patty Fallon. I live in District 4. I got in the redistricting. I was in District 3. I live in Northern Baltimore County. We were with Wade Koch. We got moved to Joy and Jones. I'm also chairman of the Baltimore County Republican Party. And I'd just like to share with you a couple of thoughts. The concern that I have and we have about the thoughts of going to 9 or 11 new districts would be, number one, the western part of the county actually would be quite dominant over the other areas, which are equally important. And the way it's redistricted now, the map does give an equality to all of the different districts in terms of their issues and the things that they are concern them. I was actually running for delegate in 2022, and I was at many of the polling places, and I saw the folks who were trying to sign up folks for the petition. And I will say that most of the folks were from out of town, and the money coming in to drive this was from out of town. So I found that to be a bit disconcerting that someone from out of town is trying to influence our Baltimore County Council. So that's a big concern. I was also made very aware in the western side of the county that the objective was to take a very highly I mean, I don't mean to sound, partisan, but a very highly Democrat area and split that area into 4 seats. Now, that was the original goal, as I understood it, while I was right there in the middle of it. And that's what is concerning, is that the genesis of this really came from an outside group to take a highly Democrat area, split it into 4 more seats, which would cause a great imbalance in the rest of the county. The rest of the county has, so you have similar interests right now grouped in the northern area. You have the agriculture, you have the eastern area with manufacturing. It's not just about population. And I have to say, to me, I find it to be, we need to be careful not to make every issue about race. I mean, I'm just going to say it. It's about similar communities who have similar issues. And if you were to take the highly the western area and give them dominance over the rest of the county, you dilute the very important agricultural area of the north side that provides the water to everyone in the Liberty Reservoir and the Loch Raven Reservoir and the food. It diminishes the manufacturing areas and the high business areas in the northeast sectors and the eastern sectors. And you need to be careful that if we do something like this, that it really needs to take into account the different economic participation and the types of communities that would be grouped together. You don't want to diminish the voices of very important sections of Baltimore County. And so that's the concern I have, because I was there for the genesis of this. Linda Walker, I mean, I have to say, she's on the Democrat committee. She's on the Democrat Central Committee. And so she was a part of the input from the outside influence, and the Democrat committee was willing to then push this. On the other hand, I do understand that our numbers do seem a bit lopsided, I will say. I mean, I see this, and we need to be very careful that the genesis of this shouldn't be, oh, let's make another minority district, or let's make sure women and minority. I hear that, but on the other hand, we need to look at similar communities, making sure they have their voice. And so that's going to be a very tough challenge for you all when you go through that. So I just want to make sure, I just want to say that I think we need to be careful. I know where the genesis came from. We need to be careful not to have outside influences affecting us. We need to make these decisions as Baltimore County. And again, so for now, I would say we need to make sure that we are going to be very fair across the board, or else I would be absolutely against it. Okay, we can't be taking just a section that is highly one type of voter and splitting that group into multiple vote groups, which would completely diminish the rights of any councilman to make decisions, and the communities in those other areas of the county to make decisions. So that's really what I wanted to share. It's just a concern. I knew where the genesis was, and it really shouldn't have started that way. And I just want to make sure that all the areas of the county continue to have their voice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions?
I have one.
I have a hand. I see a hand. Mr. Dorsey.
Yeah, Ms. Fallon, you mentioned you heard Ms. Walker's testimony, but there was a portion where she indicated she's been at this at least since the year 2000 in terms of that redistricting process. So that statement doesn't seem to coincide with your assumption about the genesis of where this began. It sounds like, at least on her part, it's been a long-standing issue. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that I can hear that she was saying it was a long-standing issue. I know that the organization that really kicked in just a few years back, though, was coming in from a lot of outside influence. So I'm talking the organization of this that was started to pick up on the west side, which I saw, and then it spread throughout the county, and the funding for it. That's why I'm alluding to. But yes, I mean, I hear that you're saying she was concerned about this for years. Yes.
The other question I have is in terms of now on the west side, over these years, we've had a growth center in terms of Owings Mills. And I'm sure you're aware that the other growth center for the county is the White Marsh area. So in terms of, if you look at the numbers, that's where a lot of the other part of the growth would be. That's where another additional district likely would be. Have you taken a look at the both in terms of population, but you mentioned that you were in charge of the Republican Party. Have you taken a look at what would happen in terms of the number of registered Republicans in that area of the county if it needed to accommodate much smaller districts than the current ones? As to the assumption you seem to make is only Democratic districts would be increased. If you look at the east side and look at White Marsh, maybe in terms of taking a look at that and seeing what would happen.
Well, hold on for a second. I'm taking my chairman's privilege here because this can get a little bit into the weeds if we allow this thing to be talked about districts and lines and that kind of thing. That is not the purview of this work group. We're not into drawing lines and to figure out partisan demographics and any of that stuff. So I'm going to have to stop this conversation right there. Anyone have any other questions dealing with anything other than drawing lines of districts? Yes.
I will say that Mr. Dorsey, I appreciated the fact that he looked beyond the west side and saw some other areas that have high population that might need to be addressed. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fallon. Mr. Harris, you have your hand up. You're muted, sir.
Oh, my question is, when you speak about like communities, are you addressing people or organizations that just deal with, like, say, agriculture in the northern, in the east where we're located? We're talking about manufacturing. Are you talking about those type of like organizations?
Yes, I am. I find that like in the northern Baltimore County area, there's a lot of similarity there in terms of the environment. They're very environmentally sensitive, a lot of agricultural activity going on. On the east side, I look at trade winds. I look at the different people that are working in those types of areas, and they live in these communities that, work in those areas. I mean, I grew up in an area like that. So I'm talking about similar communities with similar work different interests. That's what I'm referring to. You look at Towson, there's a lot of office activity, a lot of people who work in the midst of Towson office, and you have education, you have GBMC, you have the hospital area. I mean, these are similar type communities. That's what that's what I things. I don't, that to me is a very key demographic. These are people who have real zone issues. People who have real,
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fallon. So we're going to move on to our.
They see their communities have some transportation or of education, things like that. That's what I'm looking at.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fallon. Appreciate your testimony. Move on to Sharonda Huffman, please.
Ms. Huffman is on.
Ms. Huffman?
Mr. Chair, for some reason, I'm unable to make her a panelist. I don't know how she is on the WebEx, but I'm not able to make her a panelist. So what I may be able to do is unmute her. Let me try doing that.
All right.
I cannot unmute her either.
Is it possible to send her a message somehow? Did she send an email address or anything like that to sign in?
Certainly, in
In the meantime, we'll move on to Karen Braithwaite Yarn.
give me 1 second. Let me scroll down.
Mr. Chair, I see something in the chat. It's from Sharonda Huffman saying, what is the number?
Yes, Mr. Dorsey, I'm gonna get with her momentarily. Let me get Karen Braithwaite Yarn on, and then I'll take care of Ms. Huffman.
Thank you, Chris.
Next speaker is on.
Good evening. Karen, good evening.
You may unmute yourself.
Karen, can you unmute yourself, please? There you go.
Okay, hello there. Hello.
Hello.
My goodness.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Only going to take a minute or so, quite frankly, because everything that needed to be said already has been said several times over, quite frankly. So my main concern is this. What is the biggest threat to democracy? First major threat to democracy is a lack of engagement with political decision-making. Democracy is weakened when citizens cannot get involved with governance and therefore do not feel represented by leaders or their policies. Fortunately, there are 4 key ways to boost democratic engagement: providing information, education, communication, consultation, and participation. In other words, substantive, constructive engagement with your constituents, council people. Over 50% of the world's population is under 30 years old. There is a staggering gap in the representation of young people in politics, and this is a key issue for the progression of democracy. Future leaders need to see themselves participating in the governance process right now. Again, all the numbers have been discussed, all the issues have been discussed. The main issue, ladies and gentlemen, is will our democracy survive under the present way that we're operating? And I think not. Thank you, sirs and ladies.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? Yes. Is that Eric?
Yes. Good evening, ma'am. 2 questions. One's a housekeeping one. Which council district do you live in currently?
I'm in the 4th councilmatic district, sir.
Okay. And then secondly, building on your testimony, what would you expect the voter participation to be at the county council election level if we increased the number of seats by 4?
Well, it really depends on how you conduct your election process, what kind of outreach you do, the candidates who are trying to acquire these additional 4 seats. What do they do to educate the public? Do they get on National Public Radio and other radio sources where people are listening for news? Other social media spots? Education is the first thing, okay? You have to educate the populace. Right now, everybody is so overwhelmed with just trying to get their bills paid. But they know that this election in particular is going to be a make it or break it for America. And if we don't start getting our citizens properly educated so that they can participate better and more so in their governance and decision making, they won't feel like they have an invested interest that they can operate on. They feel powerless right now. So you've got to educate them about the process, how it's going to work, who's running, what they represent. You know, in the last election 2 years ago, the League of Women Voters puts out their magazine, and they ask all the candidates to elucidate. They give them about 5 different questions to address. And there were certain folks who didn't bother to submit any information. And many of those folks were already incumbents running for a second or a third time. So they obviously felt like they were secure enough and safe enough, and that they didn't owe the population at large any information or access or education about them and what they were going to do for us once they got back in. No accountability.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you, sir, for asking.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Hey, anyone else have a question, please? All right, if not, thank you so much for your testimony, ma'am. I'm going to go back to Sharonda Huffman.
Yes, she's on.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much, and thank you for participating in this committee. My name is Sharonda Huffman. I am a member of the 7th District, resident of the 7th District. I've lived here. It'll be 20 years next month. And I am also the president of the Blue and Gold Democratic Club, League for Women Voters, and NAACP, a lot of different things, but I'm representing Sharonda right now. So I'm glad I got a chance to listen to some of the testimony. I have provided written testimony, but I kind of want to amend what I thought. So I have worked in Baltimore City, worked with the council. Actually, I was there today. They have a even amount of members on their city council, but they have something that we don't have. That is a council president. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and from last year, is there's no accountability to the chair of the committee. So if the chair of the committee does anything wrong, he's only accountable for those voters. I have no say other than to ask my person to make that person accountable, and they don't. There is this thing called councilmatic privilege and things like that. So what I want to propose is that we do add 4 more council districts. We also add a city council president, and let that be a something that would be in the same similar situation. And if something happened to the county executive, they would be next in line. I think that we need to put more accountability on the voters and have someone have an extra layer. And I don't think it was fair that you compare having at-large members in Prince George's County and Montgomery County when they do have local municipalities. We need some extra layers and coverage. I also have concerns about, the words said by the person from the Republican Party. And I don't know if she's representing the Republican Party, because I've spoke with some Republicans, because you should reach out to other people that you might agree or disagree. I live in a Republican district. I don't necessarily have a whole bunch of issues with my representation, but I probably will still remain in a Republican district. But there's this whole thing about equity, right? And you can't deny it. The way we set up our district is based upon population. I don't even understand what was said about Towson is where GBMC is. People live everywhere. I literally work in Montgomery County, but I'm a virtual worker. So we have to stop these traditions that we put in our head. It's based upon population. the things that I do here in Essex and Dundalk doesn't mean it's the same thing my neighbor does. But we need to have the ability to have people that look like me. I'm a Black woman. I'm actually in Emerge. Emerge is a training program to get more Democrats elected. I think we should be ashamed in Baltimore County that we have no women on the district, and this allows opportunities. And unfortunately, there is a thing called equity, and we need to have a more diverse council that is representative of the way we are. And I disagree. We should never, ever set this up where we're going to have 4 Democratic districts. I think that people just know where they live, and that's a shame. But I am a person, I'm not from Baltimore County, I'm from Delaware. And we have this thing where East Side versus West Side. And I think if we had a city council president, that person would have to represent everyone. And the same way, if they were to become a county executive. And I also want us to, we also have this thing where we're so scared to make decisions. I do also believe, and I don't think this might not be in your purview, that you should have limitations on how many times someone can run. And that can be a long time, it can be 4 times. That's 16 years. But I think you should take all those things in consideration, term limits, a city council president, and making sure that you have some equity. We should not be making it where you have a whole bunch of just Democratic districts. So that's the end of my testimony. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony. Both of those things have been discussed. I think I can share that from our work group, including term limits. Some members have brought that up as well. So trust me that all kinds of ideas are flying around the table. So any work group members have any questions? Yes, Eric, I think, again.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Huffman. So you're really advocating for the addition of 5 seats for distinct additional districts and a council president, correct?
I'm asking for 4 seats, 4 additional councilmatic districts, and 1 city council president. And I was thinking about the numbers. So in Baltimore City, which doesn't have any little municipalities inside, they do have 14 council members. So that's an even number if somebody was worrying about even or odd. But so that was my proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members have any questions? Thank you so much for your testimony and for being with us this evening. If I can have Roland Patterson, please.
Mr. Patterson is on. He is calling in by phone. So I'll unmute him. I should be able to unmute him.
Mr. Patterson.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the work group for your labor and your attentiveness to this great body of speakers to which I have latched on tonight. I just wish to read some ratios from around the state and make one comment and then conclude. Prince George's County, representative to citizen ratio, 80,000 to 1. Howard County, 60,000 to 1. Harford County, 40,000 to 1. Baltimore City, 82,000 to 1. And Baltimore County, 122,000 to 1. I think that those ratios, with projections that the population here is growing, speaks for itself that there is a representation problem. There are too few districts. Voters are being diluted. And this dilution, moving into my second comment, is part race, part minority in problem, and part majority in problem. There is a 49.8 Black, Indigenous person, people of color presence in the county, which is not represented on the council. But there are other minorities that are additionally not represented on the council, and they too need a voice. Then there are, and I'm closing, then there are other, shall we say, economic groupings like agriculture, like ex-urban, etc., that are, if represented, grouped in with competitors within the same district. Pete Rawlings, before he died, said that we're better than this. I think that this is, you should ask yourself a question in conclusion. If you were a member of any kind of advocacy group, special interest advocacy group, be it minority, be it economic in nature, would you be dissatisfied with the circumstances that we confront? Now, you're the working group, you're not the council, and I acknowledge that. But you should relate this question. Is this a lawsuit waiting to happen? If so, would it not be better to be proactive in a manner that encompasses and addresses the issues of a growing, diverse county? We at the NAACP, I neglected to say that I'm in the 2nd councilmanic district. I'm the first vice president of the Baltimore County NAACP, for which I speak here tonight. We at the NAACP believe that everyone, minority, majority, the variety of economic groups, and etc., need adequate representation. And there are multiple groups that are not receiving it in Baltimore County. Again, I wish to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and for your addressing the assignment that you have received from the County Council. If the NAACP can be of assistance to your work, we ask that you contact us. I signed in with my email address and phone number, and I can be contacted on behalf of our branch. Thank you one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? All right, hearing none. Moving on to Ryan Coleman.
Mr. Chair, since the public hearing has began this evening, that's part of my duty is to go through the list of attendees and make sure that everyone who signed up is present. I have not been able to locate Mr. Ryan since the beginning of the meeting. There was only one person on by caller, and that is not the number that Mr. Coleman registered under. So he is evidently not on the meeting. If you are on, Mr. Coleman, please reach out to me in the chat. Just in case I've missed you, but I've went over the list several times. So I'm not sure if you want to go on to the next speaker, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the information. We move on to Crystal Francis, please.
Ms. Francis is on.
Good evening.
Thank you. My name is Crystal Francis, District 5. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to provide some remarks. And again, I echo the same sentiments of thanking all of the individuals who are taking time on behalf of the citizens of Baltimore County to work through this issue. I, like Caitlin and many other women across Baltimore County, am one of the individuals that ran in the previous election in hopes to ensure that there would be women representation on the council. I am an African American female, and I currently reside in a majority Republican district on the east side of the county. And so, I echo all of the sentiments that were heard today in favor of supporting 11 councilmanic districts in opposition to any at-large district. And I believe that this is something that the county needs to address for the many reasons we talked about as it relates to equity. It is important. And so I just want to call to your attention the research that has already been done across the United States of America on the number of representatives that exist in similar counties that are as populous as ours. I'm going to make reference to some data points that was collected from the city of Columbus, their charter review. And they analyzed the ratio of council members to residents in cities and counties that have between 827,000 to 850,000 residents. And what they have found among the top 30 cities, and they received the rank of being among the top 30 cities because they are responsive. The government is responsive to the citizens, to the residents, and the body that elected them, the individual voters, felt like the size of the council was favorable to the size of the population. And so I will name those cities: San Francisco, San Jose, San Antonio, Charlotte, Austin. Have population of 827K to 850K, and they have 11 council members with an approximate ratio of 77,272 residents per district. And so what I think we need to do is what most great counties do, is adopt the best practices that have already been set before us. As was mentioned before, we all know that every 10 years we go through the census. And the county uses that census data to determine all kinds of things. How much funding do we need to improve our schools and our fire departments? We also need to make sure that we're looking at that data to determine how our local body of government is functioning and whether or not we truly have what is called a representative democracy on the local level. And with the current numbers that have already been laid out, with the research that has already been conducted by the city of Columbus for cities across the United States and the representation of council to resident ratio.
Miss Francis, hold
we
on.
fall
a second.
outside
Hello,
of
Miss Francis.
what I would
Miss Francis.
coin
Miss Francis.
compliance
Hello.
as it relates to what
Hello.
the other nations. I can hear you.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
you are breaking up badly. You're breaking up badly. I don't know if is your cell or your connection or whatever, but like every other word is going out. So I just want to make sure that we can hear you
Let
clearly.
me let me disconnect the headphone. Maybe my battery on the headphone is dying. Is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
Oh, my apologies. So in a nutshell, I don't know, what you didn't or did not hear, but essentially I feel like we need to follow the best practice that has been set. The City of Columbus Charter Review did a study
and cities with similar population to ours across the United States, with 11 council members having a population of 827K to 850K, have 11 councilmanic districts with 77,000 residents per district. And so what that does is help to improve the representative democracy. It also helps to improve, the equality in terms of the individuals that are able to get elected, so that the makeup of the council is similar to the makeup of the population in terms of gender, ethnicity, and partisan affiliation. And so with that being said, I do ask that you support having 11 council districts, adding the four seats, no at-large district, and making sure that we bring our local body of government into compliance as it relates to the representative democracy for council member and resident ratio, as it's already been demonstrated across the United States. And I am happy to email that report, and I will send that report with that data to the email address that is provided on the website for the work group in case you want to dig further into those numbers.
All right, thank you, Ms. Francis. Appreciate your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much for your time and your testimony. I think that closes up our public testimony portion of our hearing tonight.
We have one more speaker, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. And that is?
No,
Yes, we do.
Mohan.
Yes, hi, good evening.
Panelist. You may unmute yourself.
Hello,
Good evening, Jayote. Right.
and thank you for this opportunity to speak in favor of increasing the seats on the Baltimore County Council to 11 to be determined by a redistricting committee. I am not in favor of any at large.
Hold on. You're going in and out. We can hardly hear you again, please.
Is that better?
A little bit.
Okay. I'm just speaking in favor of increasing the Baltimore County County Council districts to 11 to be determined by a redistricting committee, and no at-large seats. I am a community activist and a proud resident of District 3. I love Baltimore County. I'm a proud resident and completely biased believer that Baltimore County is one of the most beautiful, diverse, and companionable counties in Maryland. I'm also a lover of my local community, and summers are often spent exploring the latest businesses, historical nooks, and local landmarks. The vibrant life in Baltimore County is made possible by the local government we have. My district councilman, Mr. Wade Touch, is known for his exceptional constituent services. He is responsive and acts promptly on behalf of his constituents. I know other councilmen who are similarly hardworking and champions for their constituents. I also know that the council works long hours, frequently beyond their paid work week, and almost all weekends. Being a member of the council is work for a person who loves helping people, but it should not be a punishment or a process of burnout. As Baltimore County's population has steadily grown, each council member's constituency has more than tripled. It is impossible to do justice to the needs of a growing constituency without adding more seats to the council. As a professional historian, I also know that despite the current composition of the council, Baltimore County has historically benefited and been greatly enriched by the contribution and services of different ethnicities, gender identities, and heritages. How can an all-male, predominantly white council seek to understand and therefore address the needs of other stakeholders, such as women, unless we expand the council, allowing for more representation? I have viewed the videos from the previous meetings of the work group and heard the county representative mention in his contribution to the January 11th meeting that local government tends to be the focus more of wealthier, primarily Caucasian individuals. Yet time again in this public contribution to tonight's meeting, you have heard points of view from county residents from different districts, ethnicities, and genders, all asking for an expanded council. This is the reality of the sentiment today in Baltimore County. I have read the budget documents and understand the fiscal outlay related to council expansion. However, I want to point out that this expansion is long overdue and that Baltimore County prospers from the tax contribution of the large population it houses but does not represent local government. I would like to see a more realistic fiscal projection, how the budget impact of expanding the council would work in relation to the rapidly growing population and therefore increased tax contributions of county residents. I'm looking forward to seeing more thorough fiscal projections based not only on expenditures, but also on the budget breakdown, inclusion of increased tax contribution, and the long-term fiscal benefits of expanding the council. The question should not be, if it isn't broke, why fix it? But rather, how can we be proactive in continuing to ensure that Baltimore County stays a wonderful place to live and work? It seems to be a no-brainer to assert that an expanded council with smaller constituencies will lead to citizens' needs being more efficiently met and quality of life improving significantly in Baltimore County. With that, I want to thank you for this opportunity to make my voice heard.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Does any member of the work group have any questions? All right, hearing none. Definitely appreciate your time, everyone's time tonight. Thank you so much for your testimony, all of you who participated. Truly democracy in action. Even though we're not elected, we're all volunteers. So let's make sure that's put across there. We're all volunteering our hours to make sure Baltimore County is a better place to live and work and raise a family and all that stuff. So I do want to make any member of the work group have any other comments before I close? All right, hearing none. Any member, staff members have any last comments? Adam, Brad, Chris?
None for me. Thank you all for your time.
Just wanted to add Ed. Okay. Ed? Mr. Kramer? Got your hand up? Apparently not. Okay. Going once, going twice.
Tom, sorry about that. I lost you for a second. No, I
Okay.
just want to thank you. Did a great job, sir.
Yay. All right. So last housekeeping note, we will be having 2 public hearings. That information, if it's not on our website, will be up very soon. As far as locations, they'll be in person. So please, if you're interested in participating again, we will have those coming up in the next month or so. I think as far as the staff, please correct me if I'm wrong. Good. Okay. That's it. That being said, thank you so much for your time. And work group members, see you 1 week from tonight in Towson.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.